Okay, hello everyone. We're going to get started here in just a couple of seconds. So we're going to start right at the top of the hour. So sit tight and we'll be right with you. Okay, well, hello everyone. Welcome to Simutech Multimedia's webinar, Navigating Manufacturing's Challenges. I'm Deborah Shug. I'm the Communications Manager for Simutech Multimedia. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are very excited to host this webinar, but before I introduce our presenter, I wanted to go over some housekeeping items. We will have a Q&A session following the presentation. If you have questions during the webinar for our presenter, please submit them into the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. We'll try to get to as many of those questions as possible today, but if we don't get to your question, we will follow up with you directly. This presentation is being recorded, and you will receive a link to view the recording at your convenience. And just for a brief introduction to Simutech, in case you don't know much about us, we provide simulation-based software to train electrical and maintenance personnel in a variety of global companies. Here there's a couple of factoids about what our company does and also some of the companies that we actually provide services to. And down at the bottom of the screen, you'll see our website there. That's a great place to go to learn some more about our company. Also, we have a lot of other great information, including our weekly Troubleshooting Thursday blog posts, as well as white papers and other past webinar recordings. So it's a great place to go for more information. And now I'd like to introduce our presenter today. It is Samara Heaggans. She is a 20-year-plus food and beverage manufacturing leader. She has a Lean Six Sigma black belt and has a track record of dozens of successful product launches and holds a number of patents. So now I'm so excited to turn over the presentation today to Samara. Samara, go ahead and take it away.
Oh, well, thank you for that great introduction, Deb. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate the opportunity from Simutech to talk to everyone today about the challenges facing the food and beverage industry. So again, my name is Samara Heaggans. I am the owner of SH Reed Consulting Solutions. As Deb said, I have over 20 years experience in research and development in the food and beverage industry, bringing products from concept to commercialization. So from that idea to the store shelf. I do have my Lean Six Sigma black belt certification. My master's and undergrad degrees are in chemical engineering from Hampton University and Johns Hopkins University. I hold 2 patents, a number over 30 successful product launches, including Tostito Scoops and Slow Kettle Soup. And my background has always been in process research and development. So my true passion is process development. So some of the current challenges the food and beverage industry is facing. Right now, if you are working in the food industry, you are very much aware of changing consumer needs, increased consumer demands. We're all about our consumer. If we don't have a consumer, who's going to buy our product? So we need, and they know what they want. Their needs are changing, their flavors and palates are changing, and they're always asking us for something new, something different. The lack of skilled workers, both skilled and unskilled. There's a huge worker shortage right now, especially in manufacturing. So that's a major challenge. If you don't have anybody to run your equipment, or if you're always lean on a shift or short of people, that makes for a very difficult time to get your product made and out the door. And then the changes and requirements and regulations, food safety, that is huge. Right now, I'm sure you're aware there are a number of food recalls out there right now. No one wants to have their name attached to an unsafe food product. You do not want that in your consumer's mind. And then tight budgets. We're all being asked to do more with less. And how do you make that happen and still get the product out the door and meet all the consumer demands without having as much money to be able to buy new equipment or invest as you would like in your manufacturing lines. So those are some of the things I'm going to talk to you about today. So changing consumer needs. Consumers are constantly telling us that they want healthier options. They want the food to be more nutritious. They want it to taste good. They want those bolder flavors. They want more variety in flavors and products. They want the convenience. We've all seen the meal delivery services. They want to know what they're eating. They want it to taste good. They want it to be convenient. How do you make all of that happen? And then increased consumer demands. So along with they have these new needs and they always want something new and new flavors. So several years ago, people loved salsa and hadn't really thought about hummus. Now hummus is almost a standard staple in American pantries. So increased consumer demands. Our consumers are looking at companies now and saying, we want social responsibility. We want to know that you're working on your sustainability. We want to know that the ingredients are locally sourced and responsibly sourced as well. They want to know that the labels are clean and what they're turning the packages around and looking at what is in that ingredient statement. They want to recognize everything. They don't want chemically sounding names, and they want the packaging to be recyclable. Food production is a low margin business in most cases. And so that requires flexibility. You want to meet your consumer demands. How do you do that when your margins are low? And then there's a lack of workers. Right now, both skilled and unskilled workers. It's really difficult finding resources. So I've worked with a number of companies and clients where they've set up partnerships with local schools. They can't find maintenance people. They can't find operators for the floor. So they've set up partnerships with high schools and community colleges and developed programs. They've talked with the schools and said, this is what we need. We need people who have these type of skills. And the schools have responded, put that into established a curriculum. In some instances, the students are able to work part-time while they're going through the program at the company. So what you get out of this when you set up these type of partnerships is a worker who's familiar with your plant, with your people and your processes and procedures. Once they go through the program, you can hire them almost immediately, and that's successfully go through the program. And you don't have to do a lot of getting them up to speed, and they're excited and they're committed to this. And I've seen that work very well, especially in places where there are manufacturing plants where there aren't, it's out in the middle of nowhere. They're more rural areas or far from urban areas or bigger cities, and they just have a difficult time finding workers. And also second chance programs. I know of a number of companies who have set up second chance programs where you have people who have been incarcerated. Usually on the job application, they check that box that says, have you ever been jailed? And that application is automatically put in the no pile. What these companies are doing is saying, we're going to take that chance. We're going to go with this person. And usually, and that has been paying off for these companies where they're saying, we're going to give you that second chance. We are going to hire you. We aren't going to automatically throw your application out. And those have turned into some very good, strong, loyal workers that are there. They want to earn money. They want the opportunity to provide for themselves and their families. So second chance programs are really taking off. And once you have the workers, what do you do to keep them? There's always another plant down the street or another place offering a little more money. So I've worked with companies that provide transportation. Their plant was located about an hour and 45 minutes away from a major city. So what they did was they brought in shuttle buses and they provide that transportation to bring the workers to their plant for each shift. And that way it was very successful. They don't have a lot of people calling off. They have they don't end up with lean shifts where they're short of workers. And it has worked very well for them, and they've been doing that for years. Other companies I've seen have on-site translators. They have a translator on every shift. When you have a communication issue with your employees, your operators, and your supervisors, that affects your production, that affects your efficiency, and it affects your overall environment in your plant. Having the translators on site really helped this company, and it's something they've been doing. And as the workforce changes, depending on what language is being spoken, they bring in a translator for that. These companies also offer English classes to people. So that helps with the communication. It makes the employees feel valued and they are gaining knowledge, and it helps with the communication and the overall smoother operation of the manufacturing facility. Other resource retention programs are to offer paid time off sooner. A lot of times certain policies are you bring in operators, you bring in people, but they don't get any vacation time or paid time off until after they've been there for 6 months to a year. When people have children, when there are emergencies, family issues come up, they need that time off. So rather than lose lose a good employee, if you offer that paid time off sooner, they're able to use that for those emergency situations, and it helps to retain workers when you let them know that you understand that these things happen and they can take the time to handle whatever is going on. Also, offering in-house training and development. As I said, food production, it's a low margin business. We don't have a whole lot of extra money to send people out for training, but a lot of companies have in-house training and development where you can offer this, have a room set up with online training on a few computers and have people come in and do the training online in-house. So they're not away from the business for long periods of time. Once you get the training and the computer time, they can set up time, do it either while they're there at the plant or in between shifts. And also offering daycare options. Again, having that option when people have children that get sick, school's out, offering reimbursement or partnerships with local daycares. A lot of times you have people who are taking care of their grandkids or other relatives, and usually those are last minute things. I know of a plant manager who, he had a really great employee who had been there for 20 years, and she was having to take care of her grandkids. If the grandkids got sick or if they were dropped with her at the last minute, she would either be late, she had started to be late and he couldn't understand why. It was because she had started taking care of her grandkids. When they have this daycare option, she wasn't late anymore. She was a really strong employee, and offering those type of options, she wasn't the only one. She didn't have to call out all the time, and he got a steady worker who was there to be there on the floor, and her family issues were taken care of. And then tight budgets. We all have very tight budgets and having to do more with less. And it's all about production, keeping that line running. We're busy fighting fires and have emergencies. It doesn't always leave time to focus or work on needed improvements. I know for people who work in a manufacturing environment or go into a plant, there's always that project that you said, if only we had time to get the data, we could improve this or do that type of work. But then you're also resource constrained. You don't have a group or a person to assign to that always. And then wanting to upgrade and automate equipment in lines, but the lines are old. So there's a cost associated with that. As part of my consulting business, I've gone into companies and looked at and just walked around the plant floor with the plant manager and talked about what are the issues that you're having? What are the things that you wish you could resolve? What are your priorities? What is a constant thorn in your side, or what's keeping you up at night? And usually these are the things. They're so busy fighting fires, they know there's this project that they need to work on to make this improvement. They just don't have the time or the people to get to it. And that's where being flexible, looking at other options, bringing in consultants, or trying to really work and get to that flexibility either in your budget with your people to be able to address those concerns. And also reducing changeover time to decrease downtime. That saves costs and improves productivity, but how do you do that if you're too busy fighting fires or working on these emergencies that are always coming up? Again, bringing in a consultant will help with that. I know that I have worked with other companies in different manufacturing environments where their workforce was a good workforce. They had the people, but the changeover times to go from one product to another to change the line over would take anywhere from 8 to 16 hours, which was a monumental amount of time. It kept their lines down, their efficiencies were low. And what they asked me to do is come in and just really look at it and evaluate what is going on. And what I found was the operators are good, they've been trained. However, each person does things slightly differently. Or if all of the equipment or tools that they need aren't in just the right order, there's a lot of wasted time with walking, that sort of thing. So we also have old equipment. One of the things, and this picture does show very old plant, but a lot of times we have equipment in our plants that is very specialized. We've brought it in, we've modified it to do what we need to do for that line, and keeping it running is a challenge. So there's always that one person in the plant, there's always that one maintenance guy who really knows this equipment well, and that's what I call tribal knowledge, because all of how he runs it, how he keeps it going, he always knows just what to fix, that guy, but it's all in his head. And I call that tribal knowledge because it's not documented, and it really has to be. And when he trains someone, that's great. However, it's always that one guy. He can't, like if he goes on vacation, Lord forbid, he gets hit by the beer truck, what are you going to do? That's when you have to document that tribal knowledge. And then we're always being asked to use the same equipment, but being asked to make a different product. That goes back to the consumer demands. Consumers always want something newer, better, different. Their tastes are constantly changing. And how do you do that without purchasing a whole entire new line? That's, I know on certain jobs I've been brought in, and when I was in corporate America, brought in to look at a line and say, we want to make this new product. Our line was not designed to do that. How do we do that with the least amount of money, the least amount of changeover or change possible to this line? And that's where you really have to know the new product, what's required, what are the processes and equipment to get to that thing. And you also have to know, what do you have to work with? What are your existing assets? What is their capability? Talking with the vendors and knowing, what was this equipment originally designed to do? What is it capable of? And really taking a hard critical eye, looking at your current line and that new process, and understanding if you make one change or bring in this one piece of equipment, you can make this new thing. And also knowing the layout of your current plant. A lot of times we're space constrained. There's not a lot of square footage left to put in new equipment in some places. Also, finding parts. When you have a tight budget, going back to the original manufacturer, the parts are usually very expensive, or you've modified the equipment to the point where it just makes more sense to have the parts machined at a local machine shop. I know a number of plants right now that do this. It costs so much to get the original parts from the parts from the original vendor that they just have them machined at a local vendor. It's cheaper, it's quicker, and it works for them. And then that also speaks to keeping spare parts in your inventory. No one really has the budget anymore to keep tons of spare parts. So knowing which critical pieces, which critical parts you need to keep your line running, how many, and that's evaluating how often does this experience failure, where do the failures occur, and that evaluating that, understanding the critical components and the timing of those spare parts. You can cut your inventory on certain things down from hundreds of spare parts to 10 to 15 critical spare parts that you keep for each of your lines and each of your equipment. And then knowing the steps of each operation and knowing the equipment settings. I've walked into countless plants where, the operators know what they're doing, but then each operator does it slightly differently to get to that endpoint, which means it may take more time. It may be a little slightly different setup, which causes more problems during startup. Each shift may do things a little different. And that's where documenting that tribal knowledge, not just in how to keep your equipment running, but the steps of your operation, the steps of your process, and the equipment settings. I walked into a client's plant recently, and they were telling me about their operation and the process, and the plant manager said, yep, should always be set at this temperature, and we just run, no problem. And we walked past the line, and I said, but it's set at this temperature, that's different. And he had no clue. He was like, oh, no. And then someone else came over and said, oh, yeah, we're doing it differently today. Or that was for another setup. We forgot to change it back. Knowing the equipment settings, having all of that documented and having everyone trained and having it posted for that particular product makes a huge difference. It cuts down on waste. It cuts down on startup time, and it just makes your plant more efficient and improves your yields. So becoming more efficient, how do you do that? I am a strong proponent of continuous improvement and Lean Six Sigma programs, but those also require culture changes if you don't have it in your plant, which is big. Implementing a culture change is something that really has to start from the top down, and implementing lean principles. I've walked into plants and, the plant manager was like, well, we don't like those words of continuous improvement and Kaizen. Just don't use those words. Do the continuous improvement work, but don't use those words. We don't like that here in this plant. Call it whatever you want, but as long as it has to come from the top down to be consistent and to stick when you want to make these changes and bring those improvements into your plant. And those improvements, call whatever you want to call them, they do save money, they save time, and they make your plant more efficient, and they improve your yields. The ways to get to that, if you don't have a continuous improvement group or a Lean Six Sigma program, is to start with, you can brainstorm with your operators and employees on ways to improve your operations. When I worked for Campbell Soup, I was with Campbell Soup for just under 18 years. We had a number of plants, and I went into a plant. We were working third shift, and we started working on a product that was having a lot of issues. Since it had been launched, there were yield issues, there were efficiency issues, and no one could quite understand what is going on with this product. So I was called in to understand what's going on. So they had just started it up, and an operator on third shift, I was walking the line, he's like, come here, you're from headquarters, right? And I was like, yeah, I am. He's like, I want to show you this. I've told people this, nobody's listening to me. I don't think that piece of equipment, and he pointed at a piece of equipment, and honestly, soup was flying everywhere, all over the plant. He's like, I don't think it's supposed to be doing that, but the operating procedures say, turn on this piece of equipment with this product. And I looked at it, and I was in absolute agreement with him, and I said, I don't think it should be doing that. We pulled up the procedures. It was in there for this particular product, and I said, you know what, turn it off. It's not supposed to be spraying soup everywhere. We don't need it. Turn it off. And then I did my, in-depth research and looked into it. And I honestly just changed the procedure right then, updated it in the system, updated the program, and literally overnight, we improved the yield on that product. We improved the efficiency. And the thing is, I talked to that operator and I listened. He had been complaining about that for weeks, and for whatever reason, no one either listened or acted on his comments. And what you really want to do is brainstorm with your operators and employees on ways to improve the operation, but you also want to listen and then act on what they're saying. Increasing staff and equipment flexibility. What I mean by increasing staff and equipment flexibility isn't to hire more people, but if your staff is more flexible, you can decrease changeover time and your cleaning time. When I say flexible, I mean have them not be empowered. That operator could have turned off that piece of equipment at any time, but he didn't feel empowered to do so. If he's flexible, if you're bringing in these continuous improvement actions and programs to become more efficient, your staff has to understand and get the feedback that they can do that too. When you see something's wrong, comment, bring it up, and then act on it. Don't just talk about it and let it go for another 6 weeks. You can evaluate, to become more efficient, you can also evaluate your procedures and create a documented method that is more efficient and train workers on that standard of work. The ways to do that is called value stream mapping of your processes. That same plant, we were asked to come in, they had a cleaning of a line that it took over 8 hours to clean that line. And my team was brought in, we value stream mapped the process, and we realized there were a lot of steps that were being taken that did not add value, that were wasted time, wasted effort. When you take those out and you optimize that process and then document the optimized process and train the workers on what to do each step of the way, you're able to decrease your downtime, decrease the time it takes to do it. And we were honestly able to take that one cleaning, that one cleaning procedure down from 8 hours to 5 hours. And that was just literally overnight by taking out a couple of steps. If we had once we implemented all of the changes that we recommended, where they spent a lot of time looking for a water hose to hose down the line because they were short on hoses, to detach one from one line, bring it over to like from 50 feet away and use that hose. Just buy a water hose. And that amount of money, to the cost of a $150 water hose, saved the company so much money in downtime. It was beyond its return on investment. So that will decrease your downtime, optimize your production time, and then doing preventive or continuous maintenance instead of fixing after equipment failure. If you know you have a pump that is constantly going out, or a piece of equipment, maintain that pump, work on it before it fails, and that way you will be able to address it and your line will continue to run. All right. So again, my name is Samara Heaggans. Here is my contact information with SH Reed Consulting Solutions. I'm showing you my phone number, email, and how to contact me, and my website, which I now see has a typo in it. I apologize for that. So consulting is spelled wrong. Are there any questions? Thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, Samara. That was such a great presentation. You brought up so many great points. So as you said, and as I mentioned in the beginning of the session, we are taking Q&A from our audience. But if you have a question, go ahead and submit that at the bottom of your screen into the question and answer folder. In the meantime, though, I kind of wanted to ask you a question about lean cultural changes. You said it would be going to a lean manufacturing plan. It would be a major cultural step. So if a plant wanted to start implementing lean manufacturing, how would you suggest going about doing that first? Would you start with small changes, or go big right away? And then also, how do you get the buy-in from your employees with that?
Okay, well, as I said, when you're making any kind of cultural change, it has to start from the top down for it to really stick in your manufacturing plant. If the supervisors are telling the employees one thing, but then the plant managers, when his actions or words is saying something completely different, it's never going to work. You're going to have, opposing agendas. So it has to start from the top down with the plant manager, his entire leadership team, and that's how you start to gain employee buy-in. They all have to be fully on board and enforce the change with not just their words, but their actions. And you can start with small changes. And if the company doesn't have a continuous improvement group or a dedicated resource, start with employee groups. Have a brainstorming session, like just really with the operators, your maintenance people, the people on the floor who work with that equipment and process every day. And honestly, because they work with it every day, I'm sure quite a few of them have a number of suggestions. I've gone into plants where they did not have any kind of continuous improvement program, and we started with, first, the plant manager had to say, I'm all for this. This is what we're going to do. And two, so the employees would not just tell us their suggestions or observations, but they felt empowered to actually do something about it and make that recommendation. And the supervisors and the managers followed up on that. So you can start with just brainstorming sessions, create a list of what they recommend, and then prioritize and actually act on one or two. You don't have to make these huge sweeping, everybody's going to a training class for 8 hours and, and take a day off. You can start small, but if the people feel like everyone is on board and they believe it, it will stick.
Great point. Great. Lots of great points there. So if you could talk a little bit more about the value stream mapping. I know you talked about going through that and reducing the amount of hours for cleaning from 8 to 5. I was wondering if you could, if there's another example that comes into, or how do you go about starting a value stream mapping? How do you go about that process?
Okay, well, value stream mapping is a lean management tool where you document each step of a process. And what you do is you go into the plant, when they're doing it, and you talk first, you let the operators know what you're doing ahead of time, and then you observe every step in that process, who does what when and how long it takes. So, and you draw a map of it. So if the operator starts at point one at the top of the line, but then he has to walk, you know, over 2 lines to get a tool and then come back, you draw that on you have a map of the line and the equipment, and you draw on this map and you make notes and you say it took him, you know, he had to walk over here to this line and back. I estimate that's about 50 feet in each direction, and it took him this much time. And you have your stopwatch and your map and you're drawing on it with pencil, and you're able to really document what are all the steps. You know what the process is supposed to be, but in actuality, it's usually different. And then you look at it and you take out the wasted steps. Like if that hose wasn't 2 lines away, he wouldn't have wasted 10 minutes walking over there and coming back. When you take out the wasted steps, then you can say, this is what the process actually is. You can also say, if we had this piece of equipment here or this tool there, you don't have to add those things. You don't have to waste the time looking for them. And I've used, like I said, I've used this technique a number of times in a number of different plants, not just on sanitation and cleaning processes, but on changeovers. And we've been able to document literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in savings for plants doing that.
That's amazing. That's great. We are butting up against our time, but we did get a really great question from somebody in the audience today. She wants to know, how do the current challenges of the food industry today compare to the challenges you saw earlier in your career? And also, you know, if you could speculate on what challenges you foresee coming up next.
Oh, wow, that is a great question.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, right, food safety and like there are a lot of regulation changes, and there's now the FDA, FSMA is fully online now, and the FDA is now in enforcement mode. So I see a lot of companies really working to ensure the plans that they've put in place. We've all known it was coming, and there was a lot of effort to put all these FSMA plans in place, that the plans that they put in place are stay in compliance, are being implemented and followed correctly. Things from when in the beginning of my career, honestly, there was more money around, I would say. And at the time, over 20 years ago, companies, I believe, had more money. And there was more time to, you know, we're going to put in a brand new line and we're going to make this brand new thing. Now I see where at least the companies I've been working with recently are more budget conscious, and they want to make new things, but they want to do it with minimal investment. Having the luxury of being able to put in a brand new line from scratch is very rare these days.
Wow. Yeah.
And there's more, I'd say, a focus on efficiencies and just yields, sometimes new equipment, but that's more of a luxury is what I'm saying.
Yeah. That makes sense. That's great. Well, I think that's about all the time we have today for the presentation. I'd really like to thank our presenter, Samara Heaggans, for an excellent look at food and beverage manufacturing, the industry and its challenges, and then navigating them. We hope that you all found the presentation today valuable and educational, and we thank you for taking the time out of your day to view this. We will be sending out a recording of the presentation after today's session, so for you to view at your convenience. And thank you all again, and please have a great day. Thanks, everyone.